I expect to be speaking with President Xi, and I hope we're going to get to the bottom of this. But I make no apologies for taking down that balloon. Since I came to office, we've developed the ability to identify, track, and study high-altitude surveillance balloons connected with the Chinese military. When one of these high-altitude surveillance balloons entered our airspace over the continental United States earlier in the month, I gave the order to shoot it down. And because we knew its path, we were able to protect sensitive sites against collection. We waited until it was safely over water, which would not only protect civilians, but also enable us to recover substantial components for further analytics. And then we shot it down, sending a clear message. The violation of our sovereignty is unacceptable. As I've said since the beginning of my administration, we seek competition, not conflict with China. We're not looking for a new Cold War, but I make no apologies, and we will compete. We don't yet know exactly what these three objects were, but nothing right now suggests they were related to China's spy balloon program or that they were surveillance vehicles from any other country. The intelligence community's current assessment is that these three objects were most likely balloons tied to private companies, recreation or research institutions studying weather or conducting other scientific research.
China is going after Lockheed Martin and Raytheon. It has put the defense companies on an unreliable entities list over arms sales to Taiwan, banning them from imports and exports related to China. These are Beijing's latest sanctions against the two U.S. firms, and they come as tensions between China and the U.S. have escalated after the U.S. military shot down what it says was a Chinese spy balloon, and a day after Beijing warned of countermeasures against relevant U.S. entities that undermine China's sovereignty and security. Neither company sells defense products to China. Raytheon declined to comment. Lockheed could not be immediately reached for comment. Lockheed makes the F-22 Raptor fighter jet, which flew the mission to shoot down the alleged Chinese spy balloon off the coast of South Carolina, using the AIM-9X Sidewinder missile made by Raytheon. Beijing also banned the companies from further investment in China, barred senior management from entering the country, canceled residence permits for any staff in China, and imposed fines that are double the contracted amounts of their arms sales to Taiwan. It was not clear how China would enforce such fines, which it said must be paid within 15 days. Last February, China sanctioned the two firms over a $100 million arms sale to Taiwan, a self-ruled island which Beijing views as a breakaway province. The U.S. does not sell weapons to China. However, it is bound by the 1979 Taiwan Relations Act to provide Taiwan with the means to defend itself, and U.S. weapons sales always attract China's anger.
A report from a special grand jury probing allegations former President Donald Trump tried to overturn his 2020 election loss in Georgia says some witnesses in the investigation may have lied under oath. That's according to portions of the report made public Thursday by a judge in Fulton County, though the specific recommendations on potential criminal charges against Trump or his associates remain sealed.
The Trump investigation is underway.
Fulton County District Attorney Fannie Willis formed the special grand jury in 2021, shortly after it was revealed Trump called Georgia's top election official, Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, and pressured him to, quote, find precisely 11,780 votes, sufficient to reverse the Republican president's loss in the state. Democrat Joe Biden won the state of Georgia in 2020.
There's no way we lost Georgia. There's no way. That was a rigged election.
Trump claimed without evidence that the election was tainted by fraud and corruption, claims that propelled Trump supporters to storm the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. A congressional committee investigating that attack found that Trump had been told by top advisors, including his own Attorney General Bill Barr, that his claims of fraud in Georgia and elsewhere were false.
And based on our review of it, including the interviews of the key witnesses, the Fulton County allegations had no merit.
Nonetheless, Trump pressed the Georgia Secretary of State to, quote, find enough votes to reverse the result. Raffensperger later told congressional investigators that he could not give the president what he wanted.
We just followed the law and we followed the Constitution. And at the end of the day, President Trump came up short. But I had to be faithful to the Constitution. And that's what I swore an oath to do.
The Fulton County grand jury was able to compel testimony from several close Trump allies, including attorney Rudy Giuliani and Republican Senator Lindsey Graham. Both fought subpoenas until they were forced by the courts to appear. But the sections of the report released Thursday say little. The jurors heard from 75 witnesses, and those suspected of lying to the grand jury were not named publicly. Willis last month said she opposed the release of the jury report, saying that charging decisions were, quote, imminent.
I know we do have this common interest. We want to make sure that everyone is treated fairly. And we think for future defendants to be treated fairly, it's not appropriate at this time to have this report released. Because you having seen that report, decisions are imminent.
Trump, who has launched another run for the White House in 2024, has denied wrongdoing and accused Willis of targeting him for political reasons. If Willis were to seek criminal charges, the district attorney would need to obtain indictments from a second grand jury. If Trump is charged, he would be the first president in U.S. history to face a criminal indictment. The Georgia investigation is one of several threatening Trump, including separate U.S. Justice Department inquiries into his retention of classified materials after leaving office, as well as his efforts to invalidate the 2020 election results. U.S. Democratic Senator John Fetterman checked himself into a hospital on Thursday, seeking treatment for severe clinical depression. That's according to a statement by his office that said the 53-year-old Pennsylvania lawmaker who flipped a Republican-held seat in last November's elections just 6 months after suffering a stroke was at Walter Reed Medical Center after the attending physician for Congress evaluated him earlier this week and recommended inpatient care. Fetterman's chief of staff wrote, quote, "While John has experienced depression off and on throughout his life, it only became severe in recent weeks." Adding, quote, "After examining John, the doctors at Walter Reed told us that John is getting the care he needs and will soon be back to himself." Fetterman suffered a stroke last year while campaigning for one of the key political swing states' 2 U.S. Senate seats. It initially left lingering problems with his speech and hearing that sometimes cause verbal miscues, but Fetterman's doctor said the politician could serve in office with no restrictions as long as he followed recovery instructions. Depression is a well-known problem for stroke survivors, at least in part because strokes can disrupt the body's production of stress hormones. Research suggests that 1 in 3 stroke survivors will eventually develop post-stroke depression. Fetterman had been briefly hospitalized earlier this month after feeling lightheaded, though doctors determined he had not suffered a new stroke. The senator was discharged from George Washington University Hospital in Washington last Friday after 2 days in the facility. The Democrat, whose everyman style, sporting tattoos and hooded sweatshirts, struck a contrast with the polished presentation of his Republican rival, the former television doctor Mehmet Oz, who hammered Fetterman repeatedly about his health and questioned his fitness for office. Fetterman won the Senate race by over 200,000 votes in the state.
We've had boots on the ground.
Environmental Protection Agency Administrator Michael Regan tried to reassure residents of East Palestine, Ohio, of the agency's commitment to air and water testing in the area as EPA officials listened to worried homeowners on Thursday. The assurances come nearly 2 weeks after the derailment of a train carrying toxic chemicals, causing a fire that sent a cloud of smoke over the town. The disaster forced thousands of residents to evacuate while railroad crews from Norfolk Southern drained and burned off chemicals from 5 tanker cars.
We are absolutely going to hold Norfolk Southern accountable, and I can promise you that.
Regan on Thursday tried to tame fears among residents who were allowed back to their homes on February 8th.
Since the fire went out, EPA air monitoring has not detected any levels of health concern in the community that are attributed to the train derailment.
This area as well?
Yes.
Okay.
But displaced resident Christina Ferguson said she thinks the testing is bogus.
I want my town safe. We have to have proper testing. We cannot get a 2 and a 2-3, and then your papers say 1.
You're not satisfied with the testing that's been done at your house?
No, and you're going to smell it as soon as you go into my house.
She said she wants a complete cleaning of her home by a hazmat crew.
You don't bring families back with their kids and their loved ones and then tell them to scrub with Dawn?
Since the accident, residents have complained about headaches and questioned the impacts of pollution, noting that chickens, fish, and other wildlife have died off. East Palestine resident Jerry Hughes.
Like my neighbor right across the street from me, literally, got diagnosed yesterday with chemical pneumonia.
So far, testing of municipal water has found no contamination, Regan said, but he did urge residents who use private wells to continue using bottled water until their wells are tested.